Hi, I'm Brian Shepard. I'm an assistant professor of pedagogical technology at the Flora L. Thornton School of Music at the University of Southern California. Well, music technology has actually really widened. I mean, most people tend to think of it as things like synthesizers and computers, which that is certainly an element of it. But we also have recording technologies that fall under that umbrella. We have the whole distance learning environment thing of internet-based and distance-based learning processes. We have computer-assisted composition. Also, I mean, there are a number of things that fall under the umbrella of music technology, and so it's really pretty wide now. And part of what I do here is sort of oversee infusing that into the technology here. Faculty members that, for instance, are trying to find new ways to expand what they're doing in their curricula, helping them use technological means to do that. But then also from the perspective of our students, the professional musician today is really expected to have a fairly decent background in technology. It's not just you do one thing anymore kind of world. And so so many of them need to have some sort of technological background. So part of what I do also is help to make sure that our graduates, as they get out, really have a good working knowledge of the kind of technological things they're going to encounter in the real world. Much of it is software-based, and certainly as more and more things move into that virtual world, certainly a lot of it now happens inside of a laptop or a computer. But there is still a fair amount of hardware-based stuff. There are some things that right now still work better with a physical box than with a software plug-in or something like that. So it's both. It's the creation and writing of new music. And, it involves a number of elements of creating which particular pitches and what order and what rhythms and things like that, often combining texts with those notes and the overall structures. I mean, it covers everything from writing a song to writing a symphony and anything in between. Here at the Thornton School of Music, composition is one of our sort of shining stars here. We've got a wonderful composition faculty here, and we have students that really go from absolute beginners to some of the rising stars that you'll be hearing things from rather quickly. And so it's a full-blown program that, depending upon the person's level of ability when they enter the program, might be in a classroom type of setting where you're looking at works that other people have written, studying how they put their notes together, so to speak, and eventually working your way into a private lesson setting where you're working with an instructor on a regular, typically weekly kind of basis, where that instructor and you work hand in hand, helping you sort of find your voice as a composer and shape your music, and so that you don't end up becoming a rubber stamp of that person, but you sort of blossom yourself. And that's the job of a composition professor, is to help each student find their voice that they can then develop and grow. Orchestration is the taking of a piece of music and then sort of translating it so that it can be performed by an orchestra. So writing out all of the individual parts for the first and second violins, the violas, cellos, all the woodwinds, the brasses, the percussion instruments, and understanding all of those different colors that are available to the composer. I often liken orchestration to the idea of an artist maybe draws a sketch, but then when they color it in with all the little subtle shades of the various colors from their multi-hued palette, that's sort of what the orchestration can do with your piece of music. It's taught primarily in two ways. Depending upon, again, the level of the student, we offer classes in orchestration where we learn the basic fundamentals of things like how the instruments work, how they make their sound, what their lowest and highest notes are, and things like that. But then in the process of that, we also get the students writing music for the various instruments and combinations of instruments. And then certainly also in the more individualized lesson and instruction type of thing, as a student is working on a piece of music for an ensemble of some sort, the teacher will be working with them on the voicings and the orchestration that goes along with it. So it happens both in the private as well as the classroom type of setting. Almost everybody these days, of course, is familiar with the internet, this global network that allows computers to connect to each other. That actually came out of a joint research project back in the 60s and 70s between a number of universities, government entities, and corporate entities trying to find a way to hook their computers together, and one thing led to another and to another and to another, and it eventually evolved into this thing we call the internet. Unfortunately, that particular network was really not designed to do the kinds of things that we want to do now. We want to see movies online. We want to download songs. We want to communicate with each other. The original internet in its design and the way it's physically structured is designed really primarily for handing strings of text information back and forth. In the mid-90s, an organization sort of bubbled up from a number of primarily university researchers who were interested in trying to develop the next generation internet that was capable of handling all the types of things that we're currently trying to do on Internet 1, if you will, or the commodity internet as it's often referred. That organization became known as Internet 2. And I've been actively involved with the organization since 1999 and been involved in a number of research projects, primarily in the realm of music distance education. One of the things that has been really quite interesting for not only me, but in fact many of the people involved in Internet 2 was how much the demands of the fine arts were on the network capabilities. When you take a scientific process or something and you need to move this massive amount of information from point A to point B, which is the typical use that you find a lot of scientists and such using, if it takes a tenth of a second longer to get from here to there, nobody cares. But if you and I are trying to talk to each other, and primarily if we're trying to talk in a musical sense where you can understand the timbre of the sound that I'm making, where you can hear the nuance of the tone quality I'm producing, and we can do that in a live situation, that requires no interruptions. It requires a massive amount of continuous throughput that the commodity internet isn't capable of doing. And what happened was, as Internet 2 started to develop, a lot of the hardware and such that was in it was based on commodity types of devices, routers, switchers, things like that. And many of the companies that made that sort of stuff realized very quickly that their equipment didn't hold up in that kind of environment of this sort of constant streaming of massive amounts of information. And so they began redesigning and sort of rebuilding and repurposing some of the devices that they had. And we got to sort of test and break and fix and all that sort of stuff. And what's happened now is the things that we've done in Internet 2 have started to find their way back into the commodity internet. And so companies that are producing those sorts of things, they look at our research and say, we can fix this, we can make this better. Now you can go to iTunes and download a song very quickly, or a movie, or what have you, stuff that was really not possible even just a few years ago. And most of that has come about as a result of so much of the research that myself and many of my colleagues around the country and truly now around the world have been involved in the Internet 2 community. We have people that are primarily interested in how do the little bursts of light actually go through the fiber. So we have people working at that level. We have people that are interested in those devices that those fiber cables connect to. How do they work? We have people interested in writing the software that controls those devices. My primary area of interest is in sort of the top end of the user, of people that are actually using and developing protocols and techniques that if I want to teach a music lesson or be a part of a concert or something like that, dealing with some of the audio and video issues that give me the highest quality, that I can truly get the sort of immersive experience where I'm not looking at a little desktop image on my computer screen, but I'm looking at a life-size, full-blown, high-resolution video image. I'm surrounded by the audio, and it's as if you and I are sitting there talking, but you're in Miami and I'm in Los Angeles. Internet 2 holds a couple of large sort of general membership meetings each year, generally one in the spring and one in the fall. The spring one just ended. It was in Washington, D.C., and actually last fall I won an award from Internet 2, what they call their IDEA Award. It was the inaugural IDEA Award for the research that I've done in music education. But it's, in addition to the large sort of member meetings, there are a number of workshops that are held around the country at all times of the year. I typically, for instance, go teach a workshop every January for people that are interested in pursuing the music angle of Internet 2 capabilities. And I spend a week, about 3-4 days down in, I know it's terrible, I have to go to Miami every year to teach down at the Internet 2 workshop that they hold with the New World Symphony down in Miami. And it's just one of the many things that we do. No, I started on the music end. I have been a musician for pretty much as long as I can remember. My primary instrument is as a percussionist. I did my bachelor's degree in percussion performance back in the 70s. I went on to do a master's in conducting, and then eventually a doctorate in composition. So I sort of a little jack of all trades, just in the degrees that I've taken. But along the way, I've always been a musician. I spent the last 20-something years as a professional orchestral percussionist. And so as a player, as a composer, but I also in the, I guess the early to mid 80s, I got very involved in doing a lot of music for commercials, videos, television, little vignettes and things like that, and was doing a lot of recording work where I was writing and producing the music and then going into recording studios and having the people come in and record and all of that. And in that process, I found that I didn't have the vocabulary I wanted to be able to talk to my recording engineer about some sound or technique or something that I wanted, and I would come out, I thought, sounding kind of dumb. And so one time I decided that I would take a recording class, not because I was really interested in being a recording engineer, but I really just wanted to get the vocabulary and be able to talk in their language when I was in the recording studio. And so I did that and just fell in love with it. I've always been a tinkerer, much to my father's chagrin. I used to take his wristwatch apart and see if I could put it back together, and sometimes I did that successfully. But usually when I'd hear my name screamed out, it was because I had taken something apart and not gotten it put back quite together properly. But I've always loved tinkering with things. And so I think that enthusiasm that I found as I was getting involved in the recording with that sort of background of really liking to get my hands dirty and mess with things. I used to work on my car and tear it apart and rebuild engines. You know, it's just one of those things. I'm a hands-on kind of person. And so between those two, my absolute love of music, it is my life. And the fact that I love to teach. Whatever I have done through my entire life, I have always found a way to teach it. I got my first teaching job literally when I was 12 years old, teaching sailing in Chesapeake Bay, and have never stopped. I teach. I love to do it. I love working with students. I love the inspiration they bring to me. I love seeing them grow and mature. I love seeing them blossom as their own individuals. It's just really exciting. And so where I got involved in the music technology was trying to find ways to further and more effectively teach music. One of the things I encountered is so much of what we do musically requires you to have pretty maturely developed ears. And especially younger players or younger musicians often don't have that yet. And a teacher will say, "Oh, do you hear that?" And it's like, "No, I'm not sure what I'm really hearing." And so sometimes you can use elements of technology to show them something as they hear it, and they can put those two together and start to add an extra sense onto things, which then helps them, oh, that's what it sounds like. And then they really know what you're talking about. And so I've just found that all too often I can bring in a little technological element, often not even using it for what it was originally designed, but in a way that allows a student to add that extra dimension to what they're learning, and thus, hopefully, improve even more than they might without that. I teach a mixed bag of classes here. For instance, I teach some composition. I teach some orchestration. I teach an electronic music class in using computers to help create and synthesize sound and manipulate sound sources and things like that. Those all tend to fall under the general rubric of a composition area. I teach some technologically related courses in our recording area. both undergraduate, graduate types of courses on the ways to get really good audio recordings. Most of the students that are in this school are primarily some type of an acoustic instrument. Now, whether it's a jazz instrument or a classical instrument or a singer or what have you, and so there are many programs around the country that really teach you how to be a recording studio engineer. But how do you record a violin concert? How do you capture the sound of a piano? Those are the kinds of things, or an opera singer, or something like that. Those are the kinds of things that a lot of recording programs don't teach, and those are some of the areas that I particularly teach. And then also in the realm of sort of the music education world, courses in pedagogical technology, of developing the teacher to teach technology and things like that. So it's sort of a mixed bag of things. As I said, some are more of a hands-on thing, and some are more theoretical, and some are more compositional. Well, first off, I have a little bit of trouble with the word distance learning, because when we say that word, it tends to bring up baggage and connotations of, the correspondence course or something like that. And it also tends to bring up the baggage of teacher-student. Sometimes it's teacher-student. That's one area where I think we often misunderstand it. But to get back to that concept, I see that what's happening in teaching and in education is not so much that we have classrooms and then we have distance learning, but there's this hybrid that's coming together where you have some people might be in the classroom while others are somewhere else, or people are in the classroom, but I, as the teacher standing in front of the classroom, am holding a conversation with somebody who might be in London. Or, there are so many different possibilities where it's not just this idea of we take a course and we send it somewhere else, but the ability to connect to so many different locations and to so many people really takes the walls of the classroom and kind of flattens them out. And so there are no boundaries, so to speak, anymore. And to me, that's the real beauty and excitement of distance learning, if you want to use that word, is that it not only does something for somebody that's way over there, but it does a lot for these folks here too, because there's stuff coming in. It is truly a two-way communication. Oh, there's all kinds of things. You'll see web-based things that are very similar to the old correspondence course where we used to mail stuff back and forth via the postal service. You'll see things that involve webcams and little streaming videos. One of the really cool things I'm excited about right now here in the Thornton School of Music is a project that we're working on that is going to take that whole process up to, well, it's not even the next level. It's several levels beyond the next level in quality. We have an amazing faculty here at the School of Music with absolute world-class talents and abilities and knowledge. And we are working with a partner that is one of the amazing talents in production and video and audio capture and editing and animation and all that sort of stuff to try to create a distance learning program that is, literally blowing the roof off the whole concept of distance learning. And that's we're in sort of the beta testing of that right now. We've done a few little pilot programs that we're sort of letting people see to kind of get a feel for how it's going to work and figure out what we need to work on and fix and stuff like that. But it's really about to explode into some amazingly exciting things. That means so many different things to me, the idea of studying music. I think anybody who wants to be a professional in whatever field it is would want to access whoever the best professionals are in that field and kind of tap into that knowledge source. And at a school of music, that's what you've got. And so the ability to come meet with these people and rub shoulders with them day in and day out and pick their brains. I remember so many of my professors that at the time as a young, late teen, early 20s person, I was saying, I'm not really sure I get that. And now it's like, wow, that, what insight that statement that person made that at the time I didn't even really understand. But now it's had such a profound effect on me that I just couldn't imagine not having had that experience. And so, yeah, I think the training that you get at a good school of music is just irreplaceable for somebody truly aspiring to be a musician. It has to be there. Pedagogical technology is the pedagogy, or in other words, the teaching and the development of a curriculum for teaching technology. Our world nowadays is a technological world. Your car has a computer that runs it. I mean, pretty much everything we do has some element of technology in it. And even the symphony musician is going to be confronted with some elements of technology, whether it's being able to record their audition tapes or whatever. But pretty much everything we do these days has some element of technology. In pedagogical technology, one of the things we're doing at the Thornton School of Music is establishing a program to develop the concept of what you should teach if you're going to teach technology. And so much of my research and work is in the area of looking at what the world expects of a musician, what teachers could use to teach theory, history, violin, piano, what have you, and find ways where technology may provide benefits there, but also in terms of just preparing students to go out into the world and make a living as a professional musician in whatever aspect, whether it's a performer, a teacher, what have you. I mean, there's so many wonderful realms of music, but pretty much all of them require some element of technological facility. And so pedagogical technology is trying to find that sort of umbrella of kinds of things that they need to all be covered with. And so some of what I do is much more practical based, for instance, teaching a recording class, things like that. But also I'm developing a class right now to help teach college professors who will be asked to develop a technology program at their respective universities. I'm working on a program to try to develop that curriculum to help them help their students. And so one of the things we're trying to establish here at USC in the Thornton School is this program to develop the curriculum for the teaching of technology. And so that's what I'm doing. That's what pedagogical technology really is. Unless you are at the very, 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 very top of the pyramid in the music world, in order to survive as a professional musician, you must have abilities in at least several different areas. Certainly playing your instrument or singing or whatever your primary focus is, absolutely vital. But you need to have the ability to at least function in several other arenas of primarily the music world, but it might even be business skills. It might be internet web-based skills to be able to promote yourself online. It might be recording skills. It might be arranging skills. For all those years where I was a professional orchestral player, I also did a lot of arranging for orchestras, schools. I mean, a lot of music got written that paid the bills and things like that. I personally believe that in every musician's life, at some point they will teach. Now, they may not be a teacher, but there will be some point where they're going to be working with somebody and conveying information. And having that ability to be able to share what you do, to be able to look at what you do and help somebody else understand what that is. And so that art of teaching. I think so many facets are involved in being a professional musician today besides just playing the instrument or singing or composing or something like that, that in order to survive in today's world, you really have to be a well-rounded player and composer and singer and keyboard player. I mean, you have to kind of be a jack of all trades with this one sort of top specialty. But I'm a percussionist. I'm a composer. I'm a moderate keyboard player. I can sing sort of. The dogs like it. And having all of those, and then I have all of these recording and technological skills. And at any point in my life, I'm always doing at least two of those. It seems like. And so I think that's the world of today's professional musician. And so getting those skills, not just spending your entire time in the practice room just doing that one thing, I think is so important for a young developing musician to understand that they need to get out and take some other classes, spend some time with people in different arenas, learn another instrument, sing in the choir, whatever, but expand your boundaries, because those skills will get called on. And if you've got them and somebody else doesn't, you get the job. The student that comes to the university today, whether it's here at USC or anywhere, is often coming from a pretty diverse background in terms of skills that they have. Most kids come in today with, if they're coming to a music school, certainly they play their instrument or they sing. But they've also maybe been doing mixes on their computer, or they've got a little MIDI keyboard or something that they're playing tunes on. Maybe they sing in a rock and roll band or play drums. But typically, many of the students come in already with a variety of different skills and capabilities. And I think that's one of the exciting parts about this newer generation of students that we see, is they do come in perhaps less focused on one thing, like we used to see when I was in school, for instance. But we see generally a more sponge-like student who's willing to kind of see different things and explore different things. And I think that provides a student then who is more of an open book for that sort of diversified type of education that I think is so important. One of the interesting things I find about students, though, and I hear so many people say this, is, oh, these students come in, they just know everything there is to know about computers. And I step away because they know everything. I disagree with that statement. I find that the students are very unafraid to push buttons. They're very unafraid to move a joystick or type things on a keyboard misspelled. They're very unafraid of touching the technology. But their actual knowledge and sophistication is pretty low. What I encourage all of my colleagues to bear in mind is, we are the scholars. We know how to look at two theses and decide, this one makes more sense than this one. Okay? Not that's the first one that showed up in Google. That I can look at that one and go, oh, that's interesting, but let me see what this one, oh, I see the thought process here. And so, yes, we get these students that maybe have a great deal of facility with the actual buttons, but they still have the same amount of facility with the knowledge. And that's what we can bring to the table. And certainly as we get greater facility with the buttons, and I see that happening, but we still have that ability to help them understand what they're reading, to not just, as I said, take the top search result out of Google or whatever, but actually think about what they're reading and what they're seeing, and realize that just because somebody posted it on a blog doesn't mean it's true, or whatever. But being able to use the rational intellectual skills that we as scholars and researchers bring to the table, combined with their technological facility, that's what we hope to bring to that table.